Today we take a look at another really cool small sword, which is this one. You already saw it in the previous video where we compared different kinds of small swords, and actually even in the one where we cleaned them. In this one I just wanted to show it more in detail, as I've been doing for a few other small swords as well. And perhaps showing you the close-ups and everything, we can kind of get to a community decision of whether or not it is a composite, and kind of maybe speculate a little bit on what its history may have been and why it's so unusual compared to the other versions of this typology of small sword we saw. So there's not much to say about it in terms of like its history, its provenance or anything. It's a small sword that's very close to the transitional rapier kind of configuration, but it does have a few unusual characteristics to it. The main one being the guard here with its oval shape here, with its rounded shape. This is not what you normally would see on a late 17th century sword. So this is cause for some questions at least, which are corroborated by the fact that the grip here is not authentic. Not the grip itself, I don't know about the grip, but the wrapping on the grip is not authentic. So while obviously you can wrap a grip without taking the sword apart, the fact that someone went through the effort, let's say, of rewrapping and rewiring the grip here kind of leads to, well, at least confirms that it's been tampered with. So anyway, let's look at it close up. We can finally look at the controversial sword up close. And again, please, if you have any insights on this or what it may be, or even just speculation, drop it in the comments, because yeah, it's always nice to have these kinds of conversations. So we'll start by the hilt. And the most distinctive factor, I think, is the shell guard here. And that's not so much because it's beautiful or special or richly decorated or fancy, but actually exactly the opposite, perhaps. It's really simple, quite crude, in fact, and it doesn't necessarily fit the style of the sword. So what are we looking at here? Is it an addition of later times? Is it a unusual style shell guard kind of the time? Or maybe we're looking at a sword that is later but in the style of earlier small swords. So a lot of possible explanations. However, this is the ugliest side of it because it's just so simple and plain. And also, as you'll see, it has some marks like of grinding or cleaning. So it hasn't, I suspect someone removed a bunch of rust here, maybe with a Dremel or something. It's possible. Luckily, the damage isn't too bad. It's not too terrible. You only see it in this kind of harsh filming light. Normally, this sword comes through as quite beautiful in natural light, so it's not damaged beyond repair, I would say. However, as soon as you turn the hilt downwards, so you look at the side that would be visible when the sword is sheathed, you can see a little more decoration, actually. So this almost hints towards cut steel in the style of these little balls you see kind of decorating the steel surface, but it's really not. It doesn't have those facets that are characteristic of cut steel. These are just kind of studs put there. So I wonder if this is a bit of a precursor to the style of the cut steel hilt. If it is, it would be almost a century early if this sword is indeed from, let's say, the turn of the 18th century. Or it's also possible this is just a poor man's attempt to have a cut steel look applied to an old sword, because perhaps they couldn't afford something better or newer. Looking at the rest of the hilt here, we'll see again, it's rather crude in the sense that it doesn't have any decoration or anything. I wonder if this section here, so at the center of the quillon block, there seems like there may have been some kind of a mark, because you see a flattening, and you can't feel it, of course, on video, but there's a little step there on both sides. So either something was clamping this here at some point, indeed hiding, well, there's some decoration that was rubbed off, or some mark, for example. So we have these extended quillons. This makes me point toward it being, at least the hilt part here, actually older. Because of the long quillons, these resemble more a functional rather than a vestigial quillon. You can even see how they extend beyond the guard here. And the finger rings, as I mentioned, are definitely functional, actually even quite spacious. You can even fit a thumb through it, not that you would, but you can. And it also has this little rondel at the top here, in the part where the quillon block connects to the guard. Now, this is not one piece, like this rondel isn't part of the guard, of the quillon block itself, it's a separate piece of metal. So I don't know if this is original or if it's eventually part of the addition when they changed the guard, depending on but the decoration is consistent. You have these radiating lines that kind of match these little lines on the edge. Okay, as for the grip, we can see there's wood underneath. You can see it through the wire wrapping. There's no Turk's head knot or any kind of finial contain the wire binding, so this is often a sign of the grip being a replacement. And it also feels like a replacement just because of how coarse it is. Now, for comparison, if I were to take a sword that has, let's say, its hopefully original wire, I won't run my nail too much here because it's actually quite loose, but you can actually see it too. You can see how smooth and flat the braids are on this wire here versus how coarse and non-flat they are here. So this is definitely a replacement job, I would say. Now, coming to the pommel, here is where something is off about the sword, in the sense that the pommel is actually decorated and seems to have remains of perhaps silver work, I guess. I may be wrong, and this may be just some sections that are shiny, but it seems to me like that was silver decorated, which is very unlike the rest of the sword we've seen. So something is up here. And my guess is that this section here, at least the guard, is a later addition. However, it can't be too recent because it still retains part of its leather washer. Definitely old. It's not kind of a change that was done in the last, I don't know, 100 years, I would suppose. Or at least it looks older to me. We can speculate a little more about what may have happened to the sword by looking at the pommel area. And here again, we have some interesting things to look at. So the peen seems to me a little more fresh than the rest of the pommel. But again, on the other hand, I don't see huge hammer blows or evident signs, let's say, of reworking or of crude reworking. I may be wrong, of course. It's possible that the lip you see on this nub here is actually a sign of the new repeening. You will see that it is a little lighter than the rest of the pommel. But overall, it doesn't look like a rough, it looks like a well enough job that was done by someone who needed to use or wear the sword, and this is just speculation, rather than what you would see done by someone who was perhaps compositing random pieces of swords they found in their collection and just kind of making a Frankensword. Moving on to the blade. You'll see it has a diamond section, like a few of the other small swords I showed. However, what we're starting to see here is a hollow ground blade. I don't know if that comes through. I think between light and shadow, you should be able to see that. But it definitely has this concave section to it, and you can feel it when you touch it. So, but it's a light hollow grinding. It's not what you would see on later small swords where it's really like very curved. Here, it's almost, it's just a hair beyond a normal diamond cross section, if that makes sense. At one step into hollow ground, but not that big of a step that it would immediately stand out as hollow ground. But it definitely is. It has this nice solid mid rib here as a consequence, and the blade is stiff, essentially all the way up. Like here at the tip, it, of course, here it starts gaining some flexibility to it. But as you see, it's by now really thin and narrow. So that's to be expected. In terms of the blade's conditions, I would say it's not horrible, but not great. It's somewhere in the middle. You can see again what look like file marks or like grinding marks, but I don't know. I've seen a bunch of power tool cleaned swords, and if this is it, it's very subtle and not, it's not as horrible as I normally would see. So if it is indeed power tool cleaned, I'm very grateful that whoever did it didn't have time to damage it excessively. But I wonder what else it could be. Maybe it's just like some waviness in the steel. In some points it definitely seems to be like a grind mark there, but you know, it's not even sharp here. So I wonder if this could be done with hand tools, this kind of effect. Or if this is, now I'm just thinking out loud here, or is this perhaps artifact of hollow grinding and not doing like a final polish? Maybe this is just kind of a crude blade. Not a huge amount of damage to the edges, at least up to the last section here, up to the débole. Here it does have some slight damage and pitting as well. And the tip is slightly rounded, but still complete. But overall, the pitting is really minor and concentrated, let's say, in this area. As for sharpness, it's not sharp anymore. So I'm not too concerned running my fingers along the edge, but it's definitely been sharpened. Like, you can tell that it's like 100 years ago, I would probably not be as comfortable doing this as I am now. So it's on the edge of being able to cut, let's say. So what are your thoughts? I'm really curious. Do you like this sword, first of all? And second of all, what do you think about this weird composition here? Do you think it's original? When would you suggest it has been changed, and why or how? In any case, I hope you enjoyed this sword and the video, and I'll see you soon in another sword video. Bye!